Is it good?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay, I guess you can start rolling anytime, huh? So Dale, thank you for coming today to share your story with us. I really appreciate that. Would you give us your name and the division, the regiment, and your company?
Sure, okay. I'm Dale Alwine, Headquarters Company, 1st Battalion, 86th, 10th Mountain. Started out in A Company and got lucky. I'll touch on that a little bit later. I was drafted at the ripe old age of 18 plus. Waited for the draft. I was having too much fun. And of course, the war was already more than a year underway, not going too well at that point. Ended up at Fort Riley, Kansas, where I took basic training, hot summer, but I had good officers, which I remember well. That was a mystery trip, and I like to say that every trip in the Army is a mystery trip. You'll find out where you're going when you get there. So after basic was another mystery trip, and lo and behold, I end up in the 10th Mountain Division. In the rail stop was called Pando. There wasn't a house there. That was a mystery trip to Camp Hale, which I had never heard of. It was just about finished at that time. They seemed to throw it up in a hurry just for us. It would accommodate just one light division, which we were at that point. And I remember well, the train stopped at Pando, and two guys lounging at the station said, "Go back, go back." Well, there wasn't any going back. That was late summer of '43. So that was the infamous winter of '43, '44. I thought they were trying to kill us all, but of course they didn't. It just seemed like they were trying to. And culminated in the now famous D series, which was sort of brutal. A couple things came together: a blizzard, and out of camp, simulated battle conditions, meaning no fires, and a little frostbite. And at times, I suspect some of it might have been deliberate, because that was one way to get back to camp. So anyway, spring's coming, and the Rockies would be so nice in the spring. So what happens? Another mystery trip. This time it's to Texas, and we're just about totally underwhelmed. We're afraid that they will make a flatland division out of us, but they didn't. We were changed in Texas from a light division to a full standard complement, which meant that they added about 3,000 men, more firepower. That was one criticism of the 10th. We didn't have a lot of armaments, so we got heavier weapons and lots of mules, thousands of mules, which of course we had in Camp Hale, and not for riding. That was for moving the stuff, materials in the snow. Mules seemed to be able to do that. They rebelled, but they did it. So Texas now was hot, and we long have the feeling: are we not going to be invited to this party overseas? Why not? And of course, the mules was a drag. If the field generals would request for George Marshall, more troops. Well, I got a division here, but they go with 5,000 mules, then of course that would be a negative. So late 44, we moved east on troop trains. And the 86th was the first unit to go out of the Norfolk area, Hampton Roads or somewhere down there. And we of course had no idea where we're going, but we're going out the East Coast. And when we passed through the Strait of Gibraltar was the first we had an idea of where we were, entering the Mediterranean. Oh, okay. We were in Naples before Christmas, and it was a jolly good time at Christmas time then. So we know we're going north. The action is pretty well north at that time. Break in here anytime, Rita. And
You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
we know we're going north where the action is, and well, there was an interesting set too there. We go on freight trains. Now it's winter, and the freight cars have a big door open on each side, and it took days. Being in Naples, arriving in Naples, was the first we saw the frightful evidence of war everywhere. Busted up stuff, ships in the harbor, and junk everywhere. A lot of it ours. One recollection of Naples, we were free with passes to go out in the street. We were in Naples maybe 4 or 5 days, I don't know. I remember sleeping in a school without any windows on a terrazzo floor, and I was wishing for my Serta mattress. But one recollection of Naples was little boys on the street working for their sister or their mother. A frightening situation. Anyway, we're on the freight trains going north. It was not a fine dining experience. We were eating the original rations at that time. We had a choice of beans, stew, or hash. And of course the warming situation was non-existent. A recollection here, if you needed to go to the bathroom, you didn't say to the Italian engineer, "Hey, hold up, Dad, we're going to go to the bathroom, the train's moving." So picture relieving yourself out of the big door of the side of a moving freight car. It was very exciting, but it left a lasting impression. Anyway, after a couple of days, we're in the area of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Well, we could see this thing over here, but we were not exactly in a tourist frame of mind. And they call it a staging area. Do you have all the equipment you need for where you're going? Well, I know where we're going. We move into the line about January 9. I might be off a day. That was a lasting memory. It was at night, of course. We were relieving the outfit that was happy to be going back. At night, I'm driving a Jeep, no top. The windshield's laying down. I believe I'm pulling a trailer. Oh, I got to back up a second. Moving from Hale to Texas, Camp Swift, I got lucky. One of the more lucky things that happened to me in my lifetime. I was moved from A company, I was trained in a rifle squad, to headquarters company in the same battalion, meaning that at times I was not setting up lighthouse keeping in a hole in the ground. I would be able to stay in a building somewhere, maybe 2 miles to the rear where headquarters company was headquartered, or sometimes up close to the line. Headquarters company in a battalion is a service organization serving the line companies that are out there on the line, ABCD companies in the 1st Battalion, and headquarters company. That constitutes the 1st Battalion. So we're moving into the line, and headquarters company stops in Vita Chatico, a little village. It was pretty well beat up at that time. The Germans had worked it over, and of course we did too. But the locals are still there. Well, where are they going to go? And it is now, we have been back. It's a delightful little village. People are wonderful. And we take over some of the buildings or parts of some of the buildings. I remember distinctly the village doctor's house. we took over the lower level for the battalion communications, switchboard, etc. They lived in the 2 floors above, and there was an outside door from the lower level on the lower slope, and we used that door all the time. If we'd see them, we'd say good morning or what have you to either one of them. Never went upstairs. I suspect they might have been compensated somewhat. I don't know. Most of my chores, this was sort of a static situation at that time. It's winter. There's a couple feet of snow on the ground. And at first daylight, we knew why we were there. In front of us was a precipitous ridge, which is now famous, Riva Ridge, Belvedere, et cetera, et cetera. It was about 5 miles, maybe mostly east to west, a real bottleneck. Knocking the krauts off the top had been tried at least twice and failed, and now it's our turn. So that Lieutenant Colonel Henry Hampton was our battalion commander, a good man. His daughter, Myrna, it's an interesting sidelight here. I'm not sure she ever saw him. He was killed in the Korean conflict in 1953 at Incheon, and she was at that time 3 years old. So she is gathering information on him and his activities. Anyway, it's pretty well up to Hampton to figure out how we're going to get up this thing and how we're going to knock the krauts off the top. This means that we are within their artillery range, and they, of course, of us. And that could happen anytime, day or night. Artillery is interesting. Oh, yeah, very, if you're there.
No, you're in Vita Chiatica.
We're in Vita Chiatica. We were there some weeks with the wheels arranging what we're going to do here. And if you're in the wrong spot when artillery comes, you're in the unlucky column. If you have some protection, well, you don't know it's coming. And the German 88 was probably just about the best artillery piece in the war. And of course, we kept each other awake at night, and it was purely random. Could happen anytime. But that meant that we were completely under their observation all the time. So we didn't gang up too much in daylight and moved about a little as possible, which meant that most of my chores were night work here. And patrols were going out all the time, small units, figuring out, is there a route up this hill, mountain? So that I was in the communications section then, having been transferred into this headquarters company, and living in this little village and sleeping in a bed in a house. And my wife and I have been back, my daughter and I slept in a house on the second floor of an old stone house. A mother and daughter lived there. And they were wonderful to me. I don't recall other GIs living in that house, but there might have been. So that my chores would have taken me out at night in a Jeep, taking radios forward for ones that weren't working to these companies that were up further out here on the line. And we had wire phones to them all the time, but it was very crude. You didn't dig a ditch and lay a line. You put a reel on the back of a Jeep and took off down the road and threw the wire wherever it would at least get run over by a truck. Or at night we were trying to find the break in the phone wire. Interesting work. And I would come back and park the Jeep and take the rotor out of the distributor so another GI wouldn't steal the whole Jeep, and go to the house, go upstairs and go to bed, and get up sometime in the day. And I've tried to find that house, and it drives me nuts. I can't find it.
How long were you in Vinciatica?
Several weeks. I don't know. Could have been. We'll say that. one day I got up and came downstairs, and the mother said, "Why didn't you get up and come downstairs last night? The Krauts," she didn't call them Krauts, were shelling again." And I said, "Well, I certainly would have, but I didn't hear it." Now this is correspondence between an American and an Italian, with lots of hand waving and exercise, but we got it accomplished, and we learned a little bit of theirs and they of ours. One day, or sometime in the morning, I was still in bed, and one of them, I don't know which one, brought me a plate with an egg on it and a piece of bread, I guess, and I had breakfast in bed. And I've been thinking it would be so nice if I could thank that girl. She's probably alive. The mother very likely is dead. But I can't find the house, and I can't communicate with anyone in Vita Chatico that would have been there at that point in time and asked them, "Do you recall a mother and daughter living here at that time?" And I've even emailed the proprietor of a little hotel in Vita Chatico, and he talks some English, and he answered my email, but wasn't very helpful. So, but he tried, and anyway.
Did you move on from Vita Chatico? Where did you go after that?
Yeah. Okay. This needed the. You've heard of these high points in the war there. Riva Ridge, that was our name for it. I don't know what they called it. They finally determined 5 ways to get up this mountain precipitously, and their method was, we're going to surprise them. We're going to do this all at night. And to Hank's credit, it worked. There were elaborate plans. We had 2 of the 5 were so steep that they needed ropes, and some of our mountain training came in handy. That they went out ahead of time and went up part way with some ropes.
What was your responsibility?
I was still in communications, and we laid some phone lines forward. It was kind of a no man's land. They were looking at us, but a much later comment was, "Why didn't you think that we were doing something abnormal?" Well, you Americans always made a lot of noise and did everything, and it was almost normal activity. But it was planned well. He had gone up in helicopters, no, we didn't have helicopters, in planes, and looked this over. They got the men forward to these 5 positions, had to cross a little bitty river, which is still there, and they got them into the locals' houses and were totally undercover. It was about, I think it was February 18. The range was about 2,000 feet they had to get up. And we with... radio was a no-no. We didn't want them to hear us talking on radio, so we used phones. And of course, battalion headquarters was curious, what's happening? Are they going? Are they going to get there? They needed to be on the top, daylight.
Were they communicating with you during the night as they were climbing?
We were with them, carrying, I guess, a reel of wire from where it had been taken, and extending, and
so you climbed with the men.
Some of us did to keep the communications intact. And I think I was going to say it was a Sunday. I don't know. It might have been, but the Germans were eating breakfast, and they were surprised. And when a fog set in on top, which helped us somewhat. It was both good and bad.
Did you actually go up with the men, or did you stay below and communicate?
I have a lot of blanks. A digression. I had World War II tightly bottled and on a shelf, and only about 8 years ago I decided I got to pursue this. I'm getting older, and Then I tried to play catch up and couldn't because I emailed a bunch of guys that I remembered, and they were either dead or one guy had dementia, et cetera, et cetera. But I've gained information, and I don't know exactly what I was doing. But talking to other people in the same situations in communications, and yeah, we had taken reels of wire and phones, et cetera, as far forward as possible in the previous days, and then went up because there was no radio usage. Which was quite a struggle. These guys were carrying, everybody.
Is there anything at all that you can remember specifically about what you were doing? Is there anything at all?
I cannot.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot.
Mm-hmm. What about after Riva Ridge? Do you recall any particular thing that you did after Riva Ridge?
I'll put it this way. We all carry lots of extra baggage which doesn't show on us. We have I call them mental images or mental pictures that we probably think of these very few days that we don't. These situations. And that's the extra baggage that we carry always. But and I have my own philosophy that when the brain gets overloaded, it's going to shut down. We had a guy that he can't remember anything for a week, and then it cleared up. I had a working buddy. He died a few months ago. He got into the mental situation where he didn't want to get out of bed wherever he happened to be sleeping in the daylight. When it got dark, he would get up and function. And we covered for him, and he came around. There are people that have studied this would agree a little with my philosophy that if you're going to overload the brain, it's going to say that you have enough. We're going to shut you down. And what I can remember, I did not recall a year ago or 10 years ago. Those are the things that I've remembered for 60 years. And I have many mental pictures. And most of them, I don't know where I was or when, but I can see the situation. And this is pretty typical.
Do you know if were you injured or harmed in any way?
I was never injured. So I have no Purple Heart. I was lucky. The Riva Ridge situation, I'll get out of that shortly. We knew the counterattacks would be long and hard, and they were. It was days, maybe 3-4 days before we knew for sure that we had it secured. That was nip and tuck for a while. But Riva had to be captured first because it had total observation of the rest of Belvedere was a key figure, another peak in this line of maybe 5 miles. And that was planned 24 hours later. And if Riva had not been secured, I don't know what they would have done. But
did you have responsibilities, do you know, in regard to Belvedere?
No, that was a separate outfit. The 1st Battalion 86 had their hands full with Riva and stayed there. And there were, I don't know when the next movement took place, but if you captured one peak, there was 6 more beyond that in the Apennines. And the long-range plan was, let's get out of the Apennines. We had no armor here at all. It wouldn't function in the mountains. We had mules. And those poor guys, there's one story that loaded up the mules, and there was one of the 5, I think, that mules could get up. And the poor mule made it to the top and died. But to the engineers' credit, very quickly, within 24 hours, they had a makeshift tram working. And I've been back to the site. There's a plaque there on a rock. it was a wire rack the size of a single bed, and that really saved some lives. It worked well in getting the dead and injured down, and materials and ammunition back up. And a wounded person on the top of Riva, it took hours and hours to get them down for help. It was frightful. And the tram really helped that there.
Did you cross the Po?
Okay, we struggled through Belvedere, a lot of the other peaks in the Apennines, till we needed to get out of the Apennines so that our air cover was good, and we needed the armor to move on the flat plain of the Po Valley. Did that, and that all worked with paying a price. For example, I forget the exact statistics, but Riva itself was, well, let's say there were 18 killed and maybe 40 wounded, et cetera, and the historians are happy. Oh, that situation was great, except if you were one of the 18, then it wasn't so good. But we got out of the Apennines, and the Po River was a hindrance, of course. That's a story in itself. Getting over the Po, the bridges were all blown by the Krauts.
Do you have any personal recollections?
I do not remember crossing the Po River. We were moving rapidly, and we've been back to this site too. There's a restaurant there now that we eat on the banks of the Po. Did cross the Po. Of course, the Krauts were on the far side until the first units got over and pushed them back. And then we were on the flat plain of the Po Valley. It is like a breadbasket for Italy, and they grudgingly gave up any of that at all. But they were retreating, fighting all the way. So it's March, April, and we're moving rapidly. The mental pictures, for example. At times I was driving a Jeep. Sometimes I was driving the Colonel. And this picture, the two columns are walking down the road. I'll change that to trudging. Trudging is more descriptive. Where are we going? I don't know. When are we going to get there? I don't know. Did you sleep last night? Probably not. The column on either side of the road leaves room in the road for trucks traffic, spaced out about 5 yards between. Well, why is that? Well, that's so an artillery shell won't take too many out at a time. And you're carrying your piece. It's not a rifle. The Army said, you don't call that a rifle, soldier. That's your piece. Okay, what's your rifle number? 1664 249. And if you don't know it, you're in trouble. What's your armor serial number? 3350 8274. And what's your serial number, soldier? Yes, sir, for 3350 8274.
And that was yours?
That was mine.
You recall that?
Certainly.
So you have this mental picture. You're in the Jeep, and are these men in front of you?
This time I'm walking along either side of the road. And my picture shows me a dead Kraut. Now that's, considering the business that we're in, a dead soldier is not unusual. This picture sticks to me like a corn plaster. He was in uniform, of course, a blonde, and didn't look too bad, except from the waist down he wasn't present. So that's the picture, and that's just one that kind of sticks with me. But moving so rapidly, picture that you didn't change any of your clothes in 2 weeks. You didn't change anything. When did you eat last? I don't know. What did you eat? I don't know. And sleeping, eating was that wasn't too important. it became the situation to bottle off well, you've heard of the Brenner Pass. We're now in the Alps, beautiful now. And we want to seal off the passes. Hitler has a mountain retreat in Austria somewhere that he can hold off for months. It turned out to be totally bosh. It didn't exist, but that was the object, to seal them so they could not get into Austria and join up with some other German units that were being pushed from the other side.
Do you recall being in the Alps?
Oh, yeah, very
What
beautiful.
kind of mental picture do you have of that?
One picture of Lake. Have you heard of Lake Garda in northern? Beautiful. It's big. It's about 50 or 60 miles long, north-south, but east-west maybe 2-3 miles. Which beautiful lake, Lake Garda, big tourist destination now. And we're moving north on the east side. The Krauts are on the west side, which you would think it's opposite. It was not. And you could fire across one side to the other. And here I'm driving a Jeep, and they're firing. That starts quickly. So we all bail out of the vehicles and try to find the lowest depression in the side of the road in a ditch. And what they had was a German 88 on rail track. The Alps come down so precipitously into the side of the lake that there is nowhere to build a road. So a lot of tunnels. And on our side, at least 6, I guess. Tunnels on the other side. So they would wheel the 88 out of the tunnel and fire across the lake and wheel it back in before we could knock it out. And I distinctly remember getting out of the Jeep and trying to find a little protection. But moving along there, of course, they would blow the tunnel so that we couldn't make use of that. And there are a lot of interesting stories related to these tunnels, and they got lucky, and 188 shell went into a tunnel. That caused quite a consternation. But headquarters company was not the line companies, so our way of moving around the tunnels, we can't stop. Our general Hayes, his total philosophy was always, don't stop, move and move forward all the time. Well, we had the tunnels were, so he quickly secured some ducks, DUKW, we called them ducks. And the strange story is they supposedly were designated for another Army outfit somewhere, and they were always in competition, which you wouldn't think would be the case, but we commandeered these ducks to take the GIs around, the dog faces, line companies, around the blown tunnel and keep moving. And they appeared very quickly. We did not get the boat ride. The headquarters company was ordered, you go up the mountain and go around the tunnel in that fashion, which we did. The duck story is they loaded one duck with 25 dog faces, I think, and I believe maybe a 75 artillery piece, and sent them across the lake. Well, I don't know, it was loaded too heavy or the storm or both, and the duck sank, and of course the duck and the GIs are still down there. They've been trying to get everything up for years. It's been through Congress, and Bob Dole leans on some of these people. Texas University is involved in it. And we hear a year ago that efforts are still being made to get this stuff off the bottom of the lake.
Dale, do you recall hearing that the war was over and that your responsibilities in the war were concluded? Do you recall that?
We could see the situation changing. They were retreating, and that was total bedlam. At one point, the movement north got all mixed up. The Krauts got in between this. There's a part of the procession back here and part up there, and it was war is total confusion all the time. And you know who's the nearest person over here and over there, and it was a matter of supporting each other, which we did all the time. Total, you had to rely on the guys next to you, but
how did working with these men change you as a person? For the better, I would hope, or possibly the other way.
Yeah, I think so. We knew that we could rely on each other. We were trained to do that, and it became evident that your best protection was at least one good buddy. Casualties didn't stop, and of course, I think that if the war ends 2 days from now, we're still going to have dead and wounded in those 2 days, and that's just the nature of the war. But yeah, we could see we would gain 80 miles in a couple of days, and we were moving so rapidly, and some of the natives were out there with a bottle of wine or whatever little bread they had or something, and they were glad to see us. I remember their expression was "Tedeschi portare via tutti, Tedeschi portare via tutti." That what they were saying was the Krauts took everything, and I wondered at that time, did they say the same thing to them about us? And I have to give them credit that I guess they didn't, because of the way they treat us now. These are the northern Alpini mountain people. They're wonderful. But okay, we're getting it's April, the end of April, and Hitler was getting, as you can read now, Hitler was going more and more out of his mind, but he had nothing to lose. He's losing now. If he surrenders, he's lost too. So what's the point? So let's keep our troops fighting. And the picture, another mental picture. I have a reel in the back of the Jeep and laying a phone line through a little village, all beat up. I'm going by a church which is only about 1/3 there anymore, and the word goes down the line that I believe it's over. It might be over. Maybe it's over. And it occurred to me, I get a little emotional, but you're still alive. So I wandered into this beat up old church for a minute, and I guess I thanked my maker or something. Went back out and continued laying the wire. But then we got an official order from the general. No weapons will be fired in celebration except usage in self-defense. And we were not in a celebratory mode anyway. And my recollection was, in most of us, okay, if it's true, let me lay down and go to sleep. I'm tired. That was our reaction, but that wore off in a day or so, and we searched out for the German wine supplies and found some. But the thought too was, yeah, do those thousands of Krauts that are still over there, do they know it's over? They still have their weapons and ammunition. And we have to hope that they know it too. But it worked pretty well. The casualties were still mounting up to that point in time. Colonel Darby is rather famous, Darby's Rangers, etc. I think the assistant division commander had been wounded, and he was suddenly moved into that slot, and he and a master sergeant got unlucky, and a German shell, I guess the last day of April or maybe the first day of May or what have you, they were killed. And we got the word officially on May 2. And the VE Day in Europe, if you remember your history at all, I think was May 8, 6 days after the official communique, I think, from our general was Germans completely surrendered, all totally in Italy. Meant everything was supposed to stop, and did. And of course we were happy to see that. But anyway, the war's over, and I'm still alive. There are other things there, but okay. Our philosophy all along was, we were given this job. All right, let's get on with it and let's do it. I want to go home and become a civilian. And that was let's do it and bring it to an end with a reasonable victory for us, of course. And that's somewhat the way it worked out. Good.
Joe, we only have a few minutes left. Can you say what it means to you today to have been a member of the 10th Mountain Division?
Oh, I am proud to have had a very small part with the 10th Mountain. I am proud that I had a small part to play with them, yes. Very, very briefly, yes, okay. We go home, and we were totally underwhelmed again with the message that you are going to be re-equipped and you will be instrumental in the invasion of Japan. Now, we had been to the party. We didn't need another party. But the way this develops here, okay, I'm discharged out of Colorado, and I've given enough money to ride the rails home. But the top of my priority list was marrying the woman who continues to be my wife. And but I wasn't sure where I was on her priority list. But sometime after we did marry, and I took stock. I was discharged. I had no job. I had no civilian clothing that fit. I had grown a little bit. I had no car, no money. I was a poor prospect for marriage. But that has worked well. But now I guess, for example, I think you're guaranteed that you can go back to your job, which there was no such thing there. I had no talent. Who's going to hire me because I know how to shoot a rifle? But it worked out, and I have arrived at one sentence of a philosophy for myself. If there is anything in this life similar to what we think hell may be like in the next life, it would have to be infantry combat. It's a poor way to settle an argument. But I cannot imagine what my life would be like without that chapter. I have gained, I didn't know a ski from a snowshoe. And I learned what these guys find so much pleasure in this crazy sport. And I'm still skiing. I am now 83, and consider that I have been very lucky. I don't ski like I did 10 years ago, but can still see the view from the top. But yes, I am proud to have been a small part of the 10th Mountain Division. And the 10th Mountain units go back routinely to those sites about every 3 years. And we have gone back, my wife and I, twice, and one occasion she didn't want to fight the war again, so I took our daughter along and we had a ball. Will I go again? I don't know. But that's any more questions?
Well, Dale, we thank you so much for being with us today. And I should say that you've given this interview on August 4th of 2007 at the Hale and Farwell 10th Mountain Division National Reunion in Denver, Colorado. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. It's great.
Well, I'll take a drink of your cocktail.
I saw you in Italy, Dale. I was there in 2006. And
Oh.
You were there in 2003 as well, weren't you?
2000, 2003, and 2006.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, my husband is, his father was killed over there in the early part of the war,
Yeah.
Robert Marasco. So I remember seeing you. And then Bernie was there in 2006. Were you there in 2003?